Just this week, Meta announced watermelon. Not the fruit, we're talking about the model. As a developer, no matter how you feel about Meta, you should be rooting for them here. This should be you right now. Recognizing that if they actually deliver on this, we're going to get cheaper models and we're going to get more competition, right? Nothing fuels advancement like competition. He even claims matching the performance levels of GPT 5.5. Now you might say, oh, well, GPT 5.5 is already out. Why do we care about a model that is just catching up to a model that we already have? Well, let me tell you why. Price. Okay, my grandmother always told me there's two people you fear on this earth: poor sellers and people who want to watch money burn. This part right here is already being done by Google. Gemini models are really super cost effective because Google does not give a damn. They're okay with losing a shit ton of money. But Meta is even that and then some, right? The amount of money that Meta has coming in and not going out is absurd. And so they can afford to straight release something and just not care about how much they spent on it. The article mentions it's still in training. Key point here is that it's an order of magnitude more compute than their prior model, Avocado. I don't know who's coming up with these names, so I'm just going to clarify this for you. Avocado was their prior release, which is in fact Muse Spark, which was alluded to earlier by Mr. Mulletman. Spark came out in April, and really nobody was talking about it. Benchmarks look pretty good. I just don't give a shit about these benchmarks, because obviously they can pick and choose what they want to show. But the sentiment about Muse Spark in the community of local LLMs is that it's aight, right? It's not the greatest fucking model since creation of God-given Earth, but it's not terrible. And this part right here matters because this shows that they have potential. And when you compare it to the Llama models that they released prior, it's banging. Important to know, Meta laid off a lot of the team that worked on Llama. There's one thing that I think we can say is evident when it comes to Mark Zuckerberg is his desire of reputation. Right? We've all seen okay, I'm not gonna use that gift. We've all seen this man's conversion over the years from an alien from a different planet to a relatable middle-class American. I don't know if I go this far, but he's obviously always wanted to get people to like him, right? And this is a good thing. This is a good quality. We want this of Mr. Mark Zuckerberg. But because Llama really wasn't performing at the standards that he desired, he laid a lot of motherfuckers off. Meta has been aggressively overhauling its approach to AI in recent months as it works to keep pace with rivals like OpenAI and Google, right? This is back in 2025. And what is the first thing they released after that? Muse Spark. And so Muse Spark really was their comeback story. And so let's read the introduction of Muse Spark. Muse Spark offers competitive performance in multimodal perception. Right, you can just view this as formats. A big focus of their models has been health, right? They even have a separate section here that goes over health. I thought it was going to be closer, but I'm too lazy to scroll all the way down. And as I alluded to earlier, right, the one difference between Meta and a lot of these other companies, they're not afraid to admit where they're lacking. It even says here, we're going to continue to invest in areas with current performance gaps. These are things you would never can read in an OpenAI system card. Every announcement of Anthropic, it's like they've released God onto Earth. And I get it, they're at the forefront, so they don't really need to say things like this. But there's definitely cases where you could admit, hey, you know, maybe our coding quality isn't quite at the par of GPT. Maybe our ability to actually listen to what the user is asking and doing it directly, right? A lot of Anthropic models, I find they take the wheel a little too hard. I've heard Fable's a little bit better, but at least from my testing, OpenAI models listen a lot better. So they never admit to that in a way like this. And I like to see this from a company. He goes on to say, you know, with larger models in development, these results demonstrate that our stack is scaling effectively. So this is all to show that we're on track, guys. This is the avocado. This is us showing we're on making progress here. They also talk about a contemplation mode. So this is separate from thinking mode. This is them kind of attempting to tackle Gemini's deep think and GPT Pro's methods. And so with Meta's approach, right, they have their model here. Right, you can think of this as watermelon. And it's going to spit off a bunch of seeds. I'm just going to call them seeds because I feel like that'd be a sick name. A bunch of watermelon seeds. These are the ones that are going to go and do some of the thinking process. Who knows what that'll mean? I don't think there's enough data out there yet to know what this can entail. And it's a gamble, right? We don't know how this is going to turn out, but according to them, they're saying here, it allows Muse Spark to compete with extreme reasoning modes of frontier models, such as Gemini DeepThink and GPT Pro. Contemplating mode provides significant capability improvements in challenging tasks, achieving 58%. Okay, I don't give a shit about benchmarks, so I'm not going to read these out. And so Muse Spark's already available. This is avocado. avocado. And from what I've heard, as I've mentioned before, the sentiment is the leap from Llama to the new avocado or Muse Spark is pretty impressive. They even mentioned the multi-model part here, right? Muse Spark is built from the ground up to integrate visual information across domains and tools. Certainly they have a pretty big access to data. I think we all know how much data Meta has. Kind of gives them an advantage in areas like this. They have a lot of data to play with, whether you think of that as a good thing or a bad thing. And so this is the part that's interesting to me, is their portion on scaling axes. To build personal superintelligence, our model's capability should scale predictably and efficiently. Below, we share how we study and track Muse Spark's scaling properties along 3 axes. So we have pre-training, reinforcement learning, and test time reasoning. Pre-training phase is where Muse Spark acquires its core multimodal understanding, reasoning, and coding ability, the foundation that reinforcement learning and test time compute build upon. Right, so this is part of why Meta spent so much on scale. They didn't acquire the whole company, but they acquired the people that were part of it, and the main reason was because of their data capabilities. People were spending all their days labeling data, freaking pretty much everything you can think of that goes into preparing. That is what Scale AI is mainly for. That's their big benefit, and that's why they found it worth it to spend $14 billion. Primary purpose for that purchase was because of the data labeling potential. If you've ever experimented with training models before, you'll know that this part sucks ass. Right? Just to give an example, I have some experience training a facial recognition model. In my case, I did it with gender. I was trying to make a gender-specific gait. And so the way it worked, right, is you had, you can kind of envision it as 2 folders. You had the male and the female. Would have been your training set. And then you also have a set for validation, and you have a set for testing. So you have 3 different sets of data that you prepare. This part is so damn time consuming, right? This part right here takes a while. Because the thing is, with anything relating to models, if you put shit in, you're going to get shit out. That's just how it works. Right? But if you put some bangers in there, right? If you got some good quality data, you're going to get some good shit out. Right? Maybe we don't need that. This is a massive part of what goes into making these models good. And it costs a shit ton of money. People think, oh, once you have the data, you're done. You're ready. You're good to go, right? We can go home, guys. No. Having the data alone is worthless, right? You need more than that. You need to be able to actually label the data in an effective way that allows you to train on it and produce good output. That's why they're referencing this here, right? When you read this, you're like, oh, of course, there's a lot to this. So they go on to say, over the last 9 months, we rebuilt our pre-training stack with improvements to model architecture, optimization, and data curation. Together, these advancements increase the capability we can extract from every single unit of compute. And they've got a lot of it. Trust and believe they've got a lot of it. As I mentioned earlier, right, they've spent a lot of money on their compute. To rigorously evaluate our new recipe, we fit a scaling law to a series of small models and compare the training flops required at a specific level of performance. The results are clear. We can reach the same capabilities with an order of magnitude less compute than our previous model, Llama 4. Ugly stepchild, Llama, laid off. They're gone. We don't need them no more. Guy with $1 bajillion of compute is also being efficient. What do you get when you combine these two? You get a freaking menace. A combination that is really hard to beat, and if they deliver on this, man, it's donezo. You can see here what they're focused on. They're focusing in on the saving. While OpenAI, Anthropic, and to some extent Google is focused on just, hey, let's get our models as good as possible. Meta has been observing. They've been watching Gemini, OpenAI. They've been looking in. They've been watching Gemini. They've been watching these companies like, dude, in their dungeon preparing. They've been working out. They've been reading books. Their equivalent to this is this part here. They are saving in. Huge deal. As I alluded to earlier, it's not the greatest model of all time. Absolutely not. Right? They even mentioned in the announcement of Muse Spark, Muse Spark is the first step on our scaling ladder and the first product of a ground-up overhaul of our AI efforts. They're clearly signifying we're losing, guys, right? We need some kind of new Spark. Okay, that was. So is Watermelon the future? Is this going to be the model that changes the entire landscape? I think yes. I'll get into why. Number one, at the very tippity top of the list, price. Definitely somebody who does not care about wasting money. Meta has an insane amount of compute and an insane amount of buying power that they do not care to lose. And they're hiring the most insane talent, right? You saw the amount of money they bought Scale AI for. How much did they buy Scale AI for? They didn't buy Scale AI. I think it was just a partial acquisition. $14 billion. Meta acquired 49% of the company, including Alexandr Wang. So they've spent effectively $14 billion just for the people. That tells you how much Meta is willing to spend here. GPT 5.5 perf for Gemini Flash price. Like, imagine that. Be honest with yourself. Would you continue to spend extra money if you knew that you got this good of a value, right? For a low price, I'm okay with it not being the best model in the entire world. I don't need it to be. Developer relations. Now I get it. Meta is the most evil company, but you cannot deny what they've done in the developer realm, right? right? They are second to really, if only, Google. Think of all the things that Meta has provided us. React Native. Okay, those are basically the same. I'm going to PyTorch. Llama, which really is the only open option. Now, I think I've heard rumors that Watermelon could have open weights. I'm kind of skeptical on that, but the fact that they even attempted with Llama, they still have developer relations at their root. They didn't need to open source PyTorch or Llama. These are things where they could have kept them under wraps and probably made more money off of it, but they chose not to. It kind of pays to have an engineer that's at the front of your company. And here's a quote from Business Insider. It mentions Meta is expected to spend between 125 to 145 billion this year just on infrastructure. Just for reference, Google spent about 75 billion last year. When you see this number, you should be going, oh shit, it's time. Mark has woken up. The sleeping giant has been woken. This is what we had with Llama. Marky Mark went and said, hey, everybody's fired. And the question is, will he come out with something like this? Is this going to be the watermelon? Are we going to completely shift our way of thinking from this release? I think everyone is counting Meta out here, but I really don't think we should be. Regardless of how you feel about this, it's a win-win. At the end of the day, competition is good. With Meta having an actual good model, prices are incentivized to go down, right? Mr. Mullet Man might be fluffing these numbers, but assuming he's right, if they came out with Watermelon and it matched the pricing of Flash or less, you know, if you look at the landscape right now, what do you have? You have Google, OpenAI, Anthropic, xAI. As we know, Google models are just not there yet. Someday they will be, but they're way behind, not even close. OpenAI and Anthropic, obviously they hold the crown right now. And then xAI's got to it's here. You know, there are certain things that Grok is doing pretty interestingly, but they're not incentivizing these three companies to push the metal. If you add Meta into this equation, dude, this is going to be OpenAI, Anthropic, and Google, right? They're going to be behind Meta saying, hey, calm down, can't take our customers away. And so I think Meta is a sleeping giant here. I think we're going to be impressed by this model when it comes out. And if I'm wrong, don't let this down. I don't think Mark Zuckerberg is willing to let his reputation drop below. I feel like the actions they've taken to lay people off and ensure that they can do this right gives me confidence.